We're going to turn to Proverbs chapter 4. Thank you for those testimonies. They're fantastic. You can be so young but have the troubles of the world, can't you, Scarlett? But the Lord is always there to pull us out of those things. I was just thinking, firstly, a good shout out to Dave, who's watching, one of my workmates, and maybe Paul as well. We'll see you here one day, hopefully, guys. So Proverbs chapter 4. And we will read just one verse here, verse 23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. So the title of the talk is How's Your Ticker? How's your heart? A ticker is an Aussie term, I guess, for our heart. How's your heart? Earlier this year, Julie had a bit of a heart scare. Came home with chest pains and they weren't going away, so we went down to Lyle Mac Hospital. And as soon as you say chest pains, they're very serious. They take things very seriously. They were excellent. And we got rushed in quickly, which was good because there was someone in the waiting room with the boom box, playing, as you do in a waiting room full of sick people. Anyway, all these different tests, they took it very seriously. And I guess if you want to get anything out of the talk, how's our heart? We've got to take it very seriously because out of it are the issues of life. And just a few facts about it. So the heart's our engine room in terms of our life. It pumps about 100,000 times a day. That works out to about 3 billion beats in a lifetime. 3 billion. That's some muscle. And it pumps around 1.5 million barrels of blood in a lifetime. Pretty good. It starts beating 4 weeks after conception, our heart, and it continues to our final beat. And if you can imagine having a tennis ball in your hand, they're not that easy to squeeze, but if you squeeze that tightly, that's about the energy of a heartbeat. That's quite a bit, isn't it? And so that's enough energy to drive a truck about 30 kilometres. And over a lifetime, that's enough to take you to the moon and back. So when you say to someone, you love them to the moon and back, you could be being romantic, or you could be just saying, dear, I'm just being scientific. So it's not just the physical. God knows the importance of guarding our heart. I mean, he could put a cage around it, didn't he? He put our rib cage around it and a bit of padding as well. So it's the command centre in terms of really our soul. It's, when Jesus began his ministry, he opened the book and he said, I've come to heal the brokenhearted. We heard about Scarlett's testimony. For a while there she was broken and God healed her. And there's a lot of broken hearts, a lot of bruised hearts out there. And, our hearts control our mind, our affections and our will, and it's so important that we guard them, guard them. And I guess I wanted to talk about, we'll turn to Daniel. I want to talk about Daniel a little bit tonight, and we'll see why as we read. You turn your mind to people that you know that, I guess when you're wholehearted, it shows, doesn't it? When you're wholehearted, it shows you. You love being at the meetings, you look to be helpful, you look to contribute. I guess out in the world, when someone's wholehearted or has a passion for what they do, you've all seen them. It's like those unsung heroes, like the doctors and nurses that, they'll never make the headlines. Unfortunately, one has today, sadly. But hard-working doctors and nurses. Maybe there's musicians or sports players. We have them here. You see them and they're just playing and enjoying themselves. And maybe teachers. You might remember a teacher that stands out because they put their whole heart into their work and it showed. Or someone who's given you good customer service and you can just tell they just love their job and they love doing the right thing for people. You've seen it before. We're going to read about someone that's a bit of a standout. Daniel. Now Daniel, in the book of Daniel, it says greatly beloved. And I'm just trying to think of the people. I know God considers us greatly beloved. You know, we're like that pair of shoes at the op shop, or that shirt at the op shop, like this one, op shop shirt. Shoes like people have got here from the op shop, they've been discarded. Not much good. People thought, oh, they're not much good. But someone came along and saw potential and loved them and, you know, have a purpose for them. We're like that. God saw us, we were just at the op shop, and he took us out, and he's got a purpose for us. And for Daniel, we'll just read here in chapter 1, verse 1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. It's not a good time for Israel now. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favoured and skilful in all wisdom and cunning in knowledge and understanding science, and as such as had the ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So this was like an apprenticeship, you know, that these people taken out of Israel and captivity, you know, it wouldn't have been a good time. They would have lost family and friends, and they're in a strange place, strange kingdom ruling over them. And it says in verse 6, Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he said unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. So we know those names. There's another famous story about that in this book. But verse 8 here, it just says, Now this was the king's palace, so they were to eat and drink of the king's food. Imagine how dainty that would have been. And the drink would have been drink, you know, tipsy sort of drink, I dare say. And it wasn't just that. It was also they were to be part of the entertainment, you know, the evening entertainment. They would have had to sit through and watch all that, you know, and it wouldn't have been very edifying. But Daniel, and so these would have been young guys here. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. That's amazing, really. I dare say Daniel might have lost his parents. He might have lost brothers and sisters, family, loved uncles and aunties. You know, it would have been a terrible time. And to us, something like this, you're probably putting your life on the line. But he had purposed in his heart. You ever purposed anything in your heart? A question for you. What's the last thing you purposed in your heart? Maybe have a think about that. I know we're not into New Year's resolutions as such. What's a purpose? What are you going to do next year for the Lord and for your walk? What might you do? Something new, something different. Maybe there's a victory you want to get. I purpose something in my heart. It's been a while. It's the neighbour's cat. This neighbour's cat. Now, it's one of God's creatures. He just was having a bad day when he made cats. That's all. The neighbour's cat. It seems to spend more time in our yard creating a mess, leaving little, you know, I was here signs on the front door. Purposed in my heart for months that one day I would get even with this cat. And if you're prayerful about these things, God will give you the desires of your heart. So there I was, yesterday I came home and the cat is sleeping on our table tennis table. On our table tennis table, in our yard. Just sleeping there, so peaceful. I thought, now is my chance. So we get the red bucket out of the laundry and we fill it up. And we stealthily open the door and slide back, creep around, stealthy like a cat, and wind up. And just as I'm winding up, the cat turns around and looks, and it's just splash. This cat gets a full immersion, almost full immersion baptism. It was fantastic. Purposed in my heart. And I don't think we'll see the cat for a little while. It was good. But Daniel here, getting back to something more serious, getting back. I hope the neighbour's not streaming in. We'll edit that bit out maybe. Now God had brought Daniel into favour and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. What is it about Daniel? That he had this testimony, that people could see it and even kind of respected that. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are your sort, that ye shall endanger my head to the king? He said, if I don't feed you with this stuff and you start looking a bit faded away, I'm in trouble. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse, like a lentil soupy type thing to eat, and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. Gee, that's stepping out in faith, isn't it? It's a bit like Peter and Julie and Kate's testimony, just stepping out in faith, saying, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work out, but you know what? My eyes are on you. You know, I have purposed in my heart that I'm going to look to you, whatever. So he consented to them in the matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, as often is the case when you purpose in your heart, God gives you more than what you bargain for, more good stuff. Gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And some great bedtime reading. You can go on to read other things there. We'll flick over to chapter 6. I just want to talk a little bit about Daniel. You know, so as a young man carried away, that wouldn't have been easy. Maybe hardships and tests are often where we learn the best. You know, when things are skipping along, maybe we don't learn. You know, we read in the scriptures that Daniel prayed and gave thanks 3 times a day. We might just pick that up now in verse 10 of chapter 6. There's a story here, I won't read it through, but it's a great bedtime read. Daniel is stitched up, really, and there was a decree signed that no one should pray except to who the king decreed. Now when Daniel, in verse 10 of chapter 6, knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem. Now there's a thing, isn't it? The windows are open towards home. His heart's facing homeward, which is where our heart's facing, isn't it? We know that this is a grub-like existence, and the butterfly is going to one day sort of burst forth, and we're going to be with the Lord forever. But his windows were open towards Jerusalem, like our heart, and our eyes are towards home. He kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. So if you do your maths and look into this a little bit, so Daniel was a young man back in the Just Give Us Pulse story in chapter 1. You're winding the clock forward now, it may be some 50 years or 60 years. He's an older man at this stage. And you know, when you're wholehearted, when you're purposed in your heart, it's a bit like in the physical. When you decide you're going to get fit, apparently, I don't know this for myself, but you the first thing that happens is your heart muscle improves. your heart muscle starts pumping more efficiently. So that's an early and a very long-lasting sort of thing that happens. And the blood pumps around much more efficiently. And then there's muscle and tendon build up, but it's the heart that is the first thing that gives you that fitness. You know, Daniel was a good long-distance athlete, wasn't he? He prayed 3 times a day as he did aforetime. You know, that's a good thing. That's a good training regime, isn't it? Praying 3 times a day. Deliberate praying. And this was despite the opposition. He knew the decree was signed. But maybe it's because of the opposition that he prayed harder. Sometimes maybe you're going to get opposition, especially at school these days. I imagine it must be. The workplace is very worldly, but you're going to get opposition. Maybe that's going to turn you into gold. You know, your trials are going to turn into gold and you'll be the better for it. Just another thing I wanted to pick up from that story. I love the way Daniel said, let us eat pulse. Now, I'm just wondering what the other 3 young men were thinking there, because I've seen young men eat. I've seen Finn eat at kids' camps before. I know what they eat like. They like their food, and if you served them up pulse at kids' camp, you'd have a riot. So I wonder what these 3 other fellas were thinking. Daniel, you might like the pulse, but we actually like the hamburgers and chips. But they went along with it, and I think you know, when you're training your heart, it's good to have training buddies. When you're walking in the Lord, it's good to have like-minded people. Paul knew it. He picked Timothy. He said, I have no man like-minded. So Paul sort of almost adopted Timothy as a son. He called him like a son. Isn't it good when you sharpen each other up, when you pick people that are like-minded? So that's whether we're young or old. Pick people like-minded. You know, sharpen each other up, because sometimes it's hard to do something on your own, like go out on an outreach or get on your knees or whatever. But when you've got a buddy, when you've got somebody there with you, by your side, it's pretty good. You get a bit more bold, I think. So purpose in our heart. Okay, we run out of time pretty quickly here. Hosea. Hosea's just the next book over. We're going to go to chapter 10. Got about 5 more minutes. We'll squeeze in a couple more. So how's your ticker? Hosea chapter 10, verse 1. Israel is an empty vine. You go out and have a look at the vines at the moment. They're just, you can almost see them growing with this weather. They'll have grapes on them soon. But Israel was an empty vine because their roots weren't into the living water. We'll read why. He bringeth forth fruit unto himself, according to the multitude of his fruit. He has increased the altars according to the goodness of his land. They have made goodly images. So the blessings they got, they were indulging in things unto themselves. It's not, in the last days, that's not really our calling. Look, God wants us to prosper and be in good health, and to whatever we get a nice house or whatever, we use it to God's glory, you know. But they were just bringing fruit unto themselves. Their heart is divided. Now they shall be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. What a horrible thing it would be if you're courting someone. And, you know, you walk hand in hand with them, and then you say goodnight, and then they pick up the phone and they're phoning somebody else. You know, what a horrible thing that would be if they're courting somebody else as well as you. This is what Israel were doing. They were pretending that they were, you know, with God, but their love was elsewhere. You know, what a horrible betrayal that would be. Verse 3, for now they shall say, we have no king, because we feared not the Lord. What then should a king do to us? So they weren't even scared. You know, they weren't scared. I think, you know, if you've got a ticker for the Lord, if you've got a respect for the Lord, you get some of those habits and things that, you know, can stick with us for a while. you're going to actually stomp them out of your life, aren't you? You're not going to just sort of, I'll just put it on the bench there. You're going to get rid of it, like the cat. You're going to throw the bucket of water. I would have thrown the bucket as well, but it had gone by then. You're going to get it right out of your life. You're going to get it right. Sorry for any cat lovers. You know, there was a King Joash, and he was given arrows. And he said, and the prophet said, you smite those arrows on the ground, because this is your deliverance from the enemy. And he sort of tapped them 3 times. And the prophet rebuked him. He said, you should have done that 5 or 6 times. You should have really stomped this thing. You should have made absolute sure. And sure enough, the enemy wasn't utterly destroyed and came back to haunt them big time. You know, the things in our life, some things go easily, don't they? Other things hang around for a while. You want to stomp it out of your life. You want to get it and throw it. You want to chase it away like the cat. You want to get it out of your life. You know, and God wants that. God wants us to purpose in our heart things. He doesn't want us just to, look, I'm just going to put that over here. I might have a bad temper. I'll just leave that here. Or I might have trouble with this habit. I'm just going to leave it there. No, get it out. There's no place for it. Luke 21. Get it out. Otherwise it will hinder. It'll come back to bite. Hopefully the cat doesn't come back. Bring its friends. Cats don't have friends anyway. You don't feed them, they go somewhere else, don't they? There's a lot more there's a cat talk coming up, I can tell. But we're going to Luke chapter 21, verse 25, and there shall be signs. The Lord's talking about the last days which we are in. You know, you can't even dwell safely in Gilberton without someone invading your home, and you don't see another day. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear. You know, there's some tough people out there, but in these last days, men's hearts are going to fail them for fear. Imagine being so scared, your heart gives way. You know, there's going to be some scary things coming upon, and looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Now's the time. You know, so many people die of heart disease. Just reading some stats, it's 1 in 4 deaths are caused by it. And so, as we've been giving this talk, 2 Australians have died of heart disease, 1 every 12 minutes. But the worst heart disease is a spiritual heart disease, where we let it grow hard, or we let it, you know, somehow it doesn't stay soft to the Lord. So, let's quickly just finish in Philippians. Keep your heart soft. Keep it trained. Chase away the stuff that should be chased away. You know, not half-hearted. Give it your whole heart, and it shows. But we'll just read Philippians 4, verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Let your moderation, or your unselfish, gentle ways be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful or worried for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, or specific request, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. And all the people said, Brother John.